We can jam the network once we find the uplink to the satellite. Then we'll broadcast Zombie Takeout.
Zombie Takeout hasn't been very popular lately.
Hello and welcome to Zombie Takeout, the B-movie and cult movie show. I'm John.
And from Chicago's north side, I'm Scotto.
And before we get to this week's movie, we've got some feedback from Bodo on Twitter. He said, thanks to this movie, I got reminded how crappy the music was in the 80s. I was going to save this for the end of the review because it's like the last thing in my notes. But
yeah,
the closing song, the one that leading into the credits, was co-written by Harold Faltermeyer and John Parr, performed by John Parr. Can you get more 80s?
I'm not familiar with the other guy, but of course, John Parr.
Harold Faltermeyer. I can say two words, or one word and one letter.
Okay.
Axel F.
Holy shit. That's the Axel F guy?
Yeah. Harold Faltermeyer is Axel F.
Oh my god.
The composer of Axel F. and the co-writer of St. Elmo's Fire and performer of St. Elmo's Fire did that song together. I watched the actual full video after the movie. It felt like it was 87 again. And unfortunately for John Parr, as we were talking about beforehand, everybody remembers him for St. Elmo's Fire, which admittedly horribly overplayed, but a good song.
I mean, it's kind of embarrassing, really.
I like it as a song. It was horribly overplayed, but it's well written.
That grand keyboard lead,
it was very 80s. It was very 80s. But fortunately for John Parr, nobody remembers Naughty Naughty. Look it up on Spotify.
I had to go and look at the director of this because it was like, it had a very Beverly Hills Cop feel to it.
One more we have a lot more from Bodo. I'm going to be splitting up the feedback. Two things beforehand, and then he kind of live tweeted the movie. So I'm going to be working those in with my comments as we go.
So congratulations. It's like you've become a guest star on this episode.
I also said, by the way, if you watch Running Man on Tubi, let it run to the next movie. Most likely it will be a movie called Shoot 'Em Up. Watch the first 8 minutes. It's worth 5 brains easily. The rest of the movie minus 4 brains. Yeah. For those who haven't been around long enough, we reviewed that one in 2012. We reviewed Shoot 'Em Up in 2012. In August of 2012, I remember this because that July, in addition to taking our usual 2 weeks off, we had to take the rest of the month off because Mrs. Scotto was in the hospital. And during that time, the shooting in Aurora happened. And this was before we had multiple mass shootings a week. So it was kind of a big deal. And we came in a week or two later doing a movie called Shoot 'Em Up. So yeah, I remember that pretty well.
We did the movie despite the mass shooting?
Yeah, it was scheduled and we didn't want to change anything. And this was the one where the shooter had dyed red hair and said he was the Joker.
Right.
So we wanted to chastise him for that because we're both Batman fans.
Yeah, that was pretty stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not as dumb as shooting up a place.
Well, of course. But yeah, we just had to nitpick him on the Joker's hair color.
Did not fucking have red hair.
No, he had green hair. Anyway.
Carrot top.
On to some news. This is from IO9, and I'm sure this came out today. I'm sure everybody's heard about it by now. Bill and Ted have an announcement. Their third movie is coming next summer. Orion Pictures released a special video this morning featuring Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves announcing that the long in the making Bill and Ted Face the Music will start filming this summer and be released next summer. Directed by Dean Parasot of Galaxy Quest, from a script by franchise creators Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, here's how the film is described in the press release. Following 1989's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Bogus Journey.
Well, 89 was Excellent Adventure, and 91's Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. The stakes are even higher than ever for William Bill S. Preston Esquire and Theodore Ted Logan. Yet to fulfill their rock and roll destiny, the now middle-aged best friends set out on a new adventure when a visitor from the future warns them that only their song can save life as we know it and bring harmony to the universe. Along the way, they will be helped by their families, old friends, and a few music legends. Sounds like classic Bill and Ted.
But what about Rufus?
Well, hopefully they don't recast.
Yeah, you can't recast Carlin.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Rufus. Maybe they'll have some excuse why he couldn't be there, or
And I mean, I can't believe he just blew over my wonderful casting idea. Should someone take me up on it?
Okay.
The Joker played by Carrot Top.
Oh yes. I wanted to move on from the whole shooting thing, but yeah.
But think about that.
It is kind
that
of
would
perfect.
Work.
Yeah.
The props and everything. Only thing he'd be killing with them. I mean,
except
why the fuck not?
Then I would want to see Batman kill the Joker, and Batman doesn't kill.
He'd have to dye his hair green, of course, to be accurate. Because I mean, he's an idiot or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it would work.
Oh yeah. And finally, on to this week's movie, which is from 1987, The Running Man. This concludes our 2019 double trilogy or series, depending on which one of us is doing the talking.
And how much I've had to drink.
Mm-hmm. And of course, that brings us to the impromptu plot summary, sponsored by Game Shows. Humiliation for fun and profit since 1938.
And also brought to you by Cadre Cola. It spots the hit. All right. We have the dystopian 2019. Not that far off because, well, let's see, we're obsessed with the game show. We are a totalitarian government, pretty much, with where everyone's being monitored. I guess not that closely, but it's oppressive enough.
Yeah. It's the entertainment industry is basically taken over the government.
Right, the entertainment industry has taken over the government, and we have very few resources left that are being controlled by just a handful of people, but they don't get that heavily into that aspect, of course, except for the people that want food.
They don't get too heavy-handed until Richard Dawson's last speech.
That's true. So we begin, which, I mean, the director of this is the same guy from like Starsky and Hutch that went on to direct Kazam, and he really wasn't a good director.
No. Actually, in a 2015 interview about the film, Paul Michael Glaser, the director, said that he was originally approached to direct, but declined because he felt that the pre-production period was insufficient. Director Andrew Davis was hired, but fired after 2 weeks because the production was, by that time, a week behind schedule. Schwarzenegger has stated that this was a terrible decision, as Glazer shot the movie like it was a television show, losing the deeper themes that he believes this hurt the movie.
Wow. And I thought it was Schwarzenegger's fault, for this, what happened here because of the one-liners and stuff. But no, let's just get the plot summary out of the way.
There are deeper themes. I wouldn't have pictured that. Imagine
they
that.
Start with this whole with this whole military patrol coming out to quell a riot. They somehow scan that the entire riot has no weapons. It's 2019. They've got that technology. But I guess you could tell if a weapon's being discharged, you would know. So he's told, of course, to just mow down the riot. And he, of course, in big fashion, stands up for them and doesn't do it. And it begins a fight on the helicopter.
Fighting on a helicopter in a small space in something that's very far up in the air.
The reason why I talk about directing is because this scene should not have opened the movie. In fact, if you really wanted to tell this story better, we should not have known that Arnold was a good guy for sure until maybe about 45 minutes in when they found the raw footage.
And granted, they've deviated from the source material quite a bit, but that may have been too much of a deviation.
But well, if you're telling the story, you're telling the story. It's the same story. It's just we, the audience, wouldn't
That's fair. That's
know.
fair.
It would be keeping
Yeah.
because not everybody was familiar with this story anyway. It
Yeah.
was a very
Yeah.
obscure Bachman,
Yeah, it was loosely
story.
loosely based on the 1982 novel of the same name, written by Stephen King, published under the pseudonym of Richard Bachman.
Right. So, I mean, they could have, played a little bit with
True,
that,
true.
but
I mean, Running Man was loosely based on a King story too. So
that's not like changing the story. That's just changing what we know
true,
as an
true.
audience going in.
Right.
And right. So to start it out with, he's taking this moral
I
stand
said
and
Running
he
Man. I meant Lawnmower Man. Sorry.
lawnmower. Oh, right, right. Yeah, lawnmower man. Yeah, he just liked putting things before
Yeah.
man to
Mhm.
make a story. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not exactly.
Uh-huh.
So right, they begin with him taking this moral stand. Uh, I'm trying to remember how he gets. Oh right, he doesn't get arrested right away. Oh no, wait, he's in the prison. That's right,
Yeah, yeah.
he's in prison.
He's thrown in jail for disobeying a probably court-martialed for disobeying a direct order.
Right, and then on top of that, he plans a break, and he comes up with the absolute worst plan in the world to escape the city. He decides to kidnap someone, and
Well, that was kind of a last-minute decision because she was just kind of there. He thought that his brother was living there, but then apparently he sold the place to her.
well, I think they said that his brother was arrested and taken to a
Oh,
re-education
right. He
camp,
was yeah, right. You're right. He was
and
re-educated.
so
She got the place cheap.
she got the place cheap. Um, but then you just say, okay, my bad, and then leave. You
Mhm.
know,
Except,
you don't hang
but
around.
before she saw him, she saw the news and found
Yeah,
out that he had escaped. So,
but yeah, you get the fuck out of there. Well, actually, I think you could figure out that your brother no longer lives there just from the shit in the place before she
oh
came
yes,
home.
yes.
So you get out, say he's no longer here, and figure out another way to get out of the city. But no, and he did not. Instead, he believes he can kidnap her, go through one of the most secure areas in the city, the airport, and somehow find his way out. So of course that goes to shit, and he winds up back in custody. But this time he is given an offer he can't refuse to be on the game show where they watch pretty much just the old timey gladiator
Yeah.
thing, only they call it the Running Man. Um, they do all the
Basically, escape from the hunters as long as you can. If you get far enough, they claim you'll be free and exonerated and given all these things.
right, and he's of course injected with a bunch of things, which I'm not sure why they went through all that because it didn't really look like it actually had any bearing on the results of the story. So that was just more wasted screen time of Schwarzenegger being shackled and tortured or whatever just for the hell of it. They should have just put a helmet on him with bees while they were at it. Um, but of course, they kept changing the rules of the Running Man game. They kept adding people. It was kind of like a Sergeant Pepper by the end of it, where like, okay, we've got two guys, but then there's one guy, and then there's all this other
Well, they
stuff.
started by adding the two guys that he escaped with, and then
Right,
they added the woman whose apartment he broke into for some reason because she was apparently it had a change of heart at some point and decided to start helping him.
right. So could you imagine? Well, because they lied about the people he killed in the
Oh, right,
airport.
yeah. She found
And
out
so
about
she's
that.
kind of like, wait, what the fuck? Are they lying to us about these
Mm,
things? And like I said, if we had seen the doctored video before we saw the real video,
yeah,
like how we'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. You're like, should we not be rooting for this guy in the
yeah,
first place? Should we be? Because I mean, it would also lead to the whole thing about how people are easily manipulated too.
yeah.
Um,
And save Richard Dawson some monologue at the end.
well, Richard Dawson, they couldn't give him enough time in this movie, honestly. you know,
Oh, I don't have a problem with his performance. He was Richard Dawson. He was being Richard Dawson. It was great. It's just that whole monologue at the end just gets too heavy-handed and
yeah,
direct.
yeah. But but yeah, they drop her in for some reason. I'm not even sure why they would come up with that, or why that would be something they would think would add to the ratings of this. To
I
just
think it was
drop,
just a convenient way to kill her off.
right, to throw her in. Although, I mean, he could do a number of things to kill
Oh,
her off.
oh, yeah. Well, they get to kill her off with an excuse, with an alibi.
And I completely did not remember the fake climax scene with Jesse Ventura
Mhm.
that they do to try to sweep everything under the rug. That they pretty much come up with a Photoshop before Photoshop. This movie did come up with some technologies before
Yeah, yeah.
they existed, or they were. Yeah, I mean, they pretty much had Alexa and
Yeah. And
Siri down,
I think
except
Photoshop may have existed, but it was very early. And also the hair, the wig they had on Jesse Ventura cracked me the fuck up.
oh yeah, yeah. He wore some funny toupees even during the
Mhm.
WWE days or F days.
And Bodo said Jesse Ventura sporting an epic 70s porn stash.
He had that stash way into the 90s. But anyway, of course, the equivalent of the Phantom Menace, where they had the pilots being held captive next to the planes, the Resistance had their base somewhere on the set of the Running Man
Yeah.
show. Let that sink in, as the kids like to say. They had their base on the set of the Running Man show. How is that possible? But
Yeah.
anyway, hilarity ensues.
Mhm. And the opening titles looked like a video game.
That was terrible.
This font, this really pixelated font that like would have worked perfectly in a video game of the time
I think
with
even by
these,
87 standards, that was pretty
yeah,
shitty.
with these weird animated characters running that looked cheesy as hell from the front. You turn them to the side, they're still
Yeah,
cheesy, but they're clearly Schwarzenegger at that point.
right.
And Bodo said that the opening title credits looked like the movie Wizards, which I haven't seen, but apparently they borrowed the font. It looked like one of those generic fonts.
This looked like it should have been made. It was made in the early 80s, not the late 80s.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't expect to see Mick Fleetwood and Dweezil Zappa. Had I known Dweezil was in this, I would have reviewed it last week.
We had a Zappa family
Mhm.
week.
Yeah.
He looked so young.
Yeah, Dweezil looks very young, and they had this age makeup on Mick Fleetwood that made him look about as old as he looks now.
Right. And I mean, I remember Dweezil Zappa as an MTV VJ.
Yeah,
Like that, I think it was a little after this though.
yeah,
And
probably.
and you're right, I don't remember him looking that young.
And Bodo said, "Funny, Mick Fleetwood makes a Star Trek joke. This is later in the film. Just
Yeah.
as I was thinking, he looks like an albino Klingon."
Mick Fleetwood is a huge Star Trek fan and did a cameo in one of the Star Trek movies, I believe.
Okay, and he's a good actor for a musician.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
an alien or something. Like he's big, tall, and he's in the suit. And he just kind of. I can't remember which one he's in, but I know he's done some Star Trek.
Okay. And I have seen him in a couple of things. Probably it's probably one of the ones we reviewed, one of the classics.
It could be, yeah.
And I've seen him in a few other things. And I always like seeing him as an actor. I mean, he doesn't do huge leading things, but he just has these little background roles, and he's really very likable in them.
The drummer of Spinal Tap, one of the drummers.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he just played with them like when they were
Right, yeah, yeah.
doing a tour.
Now, during I won't say prison escape, during the work camp escape scene, because that's what it was. The guards were wearing these respirators, even outside.
Yeah, they didn't explain.
They looked a lot like Darth Vader. In fact, Bodo said, "At the beginning, Shi'at made me think that if the rebellion could shoot that what many Darth Vaders, the series would have been a lot shorter." Because they were clearly biting off Vader, with those masks.
How about the green screen in the helicopter scene in the beginning?
Oh yeah, yeah. The helicopter scene is just that
So
whole
green screen.
and that whole idea of starting a fist fight in a helicopter. It's just no one would do that.
But
You would hold the gun to him, and I can't imagine how stupid you would have to be to do that.
the most the biggest thing they missed about 2019 in this movie came after the prison break, when Schwarzenegger was wandering around the city.
Mhm.
He's smoking a cigar in public in
Oh, yeah, yeah,
California.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of smoking
Right.
in this film, which is
The
again
least
not
2019 thing
yeah,
you can think of,
something they
actually.
didn't know. Little did they know that when they made this movie, that showing Richard Dawson smoking made Richard more evil than 100 serial killers.
It's funny that Bodo caught that too. The public
Well,
smoking.
as an ex-smoker, I did notice a lot of smoking. One scene with Amber, Maria Conchita Alonso's character, and another woman in a hallway, and they're smoking in a hallway next to
Oh,
this
that's
vending
right.
machine.
Yeah.
That's the one that caught my attention because I vaguely remember being able to smoke indoors. Like I had just started at the time. Also, there was this fragment in the score that kept getting repeated, and part of it sounded like Careless Whispers. They just Poltermeyer just bit a bit of the little bit of the melody from Careless Whispers and worked it into the score.
It is a very 80s score, as
Mhm.
we said. I mean, they did a little hair metal, they did a little, new wave-ish pop, synth
Some
pop.
a couple of other things they didn't realize would change in 30 years. When Schwarzenegger is going through her stuff, when he kidnaps her, he finds this band music, and they're on cassettes.
Can't wait a minute. They had CDs back then, so why would they
Literally,
take
CDs were just a
cassettes?
thing at that point, just becoming a thing.
Yes.
So yeah, she still had cassettes, and they also apparently didn't think that PC UIs would change. User interfaces would change
Hmm.
because you still had an 87 user interface.
Uh, the other thing is they were they have the Siri Alexa thing where she comes home. It can make coffee. It can make toast. However, the easiest voice activated machine to make, it cannot call 911
Yeah.
when your home is being invaded.
Mhm.
How do they think that works? You can voice activate your toaster to put the bread in the toaster.
Well, except with the toaster, the bread was already in there, so the bread has to
True,
sit in the toaster
true.
all day.
Okay, you can get stale, and then you can call, but it can't activate the phone to call 911. They had speakerphones back then, so I
Yeah.
don't get why they couldn't have thought of that.
And in that scene in her apartment, they showed a bit of the news, and they did at a later point in the movie. And as the newscaster is throwing to a clip, they turn right, and then they do this weird transition, like where it's like on a cube. It was just so jarring and took me out. Like it's just this abrupt turn to the right, and then this, I think it was right or my right, so they're left, and then this cube effect. It was very 80s. Speaking of 80s, once we get into the whole Running Man game section,
Yeah.
it suddenly turns into solid gold.
Right. And then they said at 29 minutes, we're suddenly back in the 80s.
As Bodo put it, wow, crappy music with the dance moves of MC Hammer.
And the people, the extras, of course, who were watching the show, clearly did not know they were cheering for dancers on a television.
Mhm.
The director's just saying, just cheer like you're watching something really entertaining and you guys are really psyched about it, not explaining, oh yeah, there's just some dancers, the intro to the show. But yeah, lots of cuts to people cheering for
Yeah.
people who are like, what?
I did get a kick out of the Justice Department Entertainment Division. And
Court
one,
appointed agents.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Although, I mean, our president probably does have an agent. Anyway, I did get a kick out of, or did appreciate that there was a character named Sub-Zero 5 years before Mortal Kombat.
That's true. Professor Tanaka.
Yeah, who was Odd Job in the James Bond movies. It said, Bodo said, Sub-Zero, funny seeing Odd Job not cutting people's heads off, but getting his cut off.
That had to have been an
A
inside
reference,
joke
yeah, yeah.
there. Yeah. Um,
And he
But
was a hockey-themed assassin. How video game.
yeah.
They did get one thing right about the 2019, though. Gilligan's Island was all but forgotten.
Is it? I'm sure it's being reran somewhere. I'm just not home
I don't know.
to catch the
I think
reruns.
our generation is the last one that's going to remember Gilligan's Island.
You think so?
Yeah.
Hmm. Let's think though. It's 2019 now,
Mm-hmm.
and we're younger than Richard Dawson. What? Well, nah,
Quite a bit.
maybe. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
He was talking to a millennial,
Right.
and they didn't know Gilligan's
That's
Island.
true. That's true. Yeah, they were technically they were millennial. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. All
I
right. So maybe they got it.
I could have done without Dynamo's aria. One of the killers, Dynamo, has to sing before he
Dynamo's the
goes out on the
most
field.
useless villain I've ever seen in cinematic history.
I did love his little car though. He's got this little car, like his buggy, with his that he like half of him sticks out of. Looks like something from Megaforce.
Looks like something from Mario Kart.
Yeah.
He's got this light bright suit for the Electric Horseman or something like that. I don't know what the fuck any of that was.
And Bodo posed a great question. Better soprano, Dynamo singing, in quotes, or Buzzsaw getting buzzsawed? I got to go with Buzzsaw. Buzzsaw was his partner. Rode a motorcycle, used a chainsaw. When Bodo said he went soprano, you get the idea.
Yeah.
I think you can predict how he died, and I vote for Buzzsaw.
I mean, the other thing what this movie is losing a brain for me is from the one-liners though. The one-liners are just so bad in this, and they're out of place even for the movie and like what's going on in the movie. It's completely like, really, would he really just be like more like Plane Zero? I honestly thought when Richard Dawson was saying this is horrible, I honestly thought he was referring to the one-liner rather than the death that occurred, because the way it's cut.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the one-liner.
That was Schwarzenegger's thing, though. It still is the one-liners.
I don't know if it was necessarily as much before this.
Oh, this may have started it. Okay.
I think they really went out of their way to shoehorn "I'll be back" and all that other stuff in there. I mean, he said "I'll be back" as a line in the Terminator,
right?
Already, but it wasn't like as a wink. It was
right. That was just a logical line at the moment.
"I'll be back."
And it just became a meme because of his delivery.
Yeah. And so they added it here, and then they put it in again in the sequel, Yeah. And then, of course, we got to see what was the one that we reviewed, Last Action Hero.
Oh, that's right. I thought we'd only done one Schwarzenegger movie.
Because you always say that.
I forgot about Last Action Hero. I was thinking Conan and this one. This is our third.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of the hunters, though, Jim Brown was one of them. Played Fireball.
How do you outrun Jim Brown? As I say in my notes, you can't.
Yeah, and he's got this what Bodo describes as an epic steampunk haircut. It's kind of dyed on the sides.
Right. I wish he had a longer run. Actually.
Yeah. He's outrunning Jim Brown is a good question.
I'm glad the flammable material didn't do him in, because I mean that would have been ridiculous to send the guy in with the flamethrower with gasoline and shit all over the place. So I'm glad it went on longer than that. But then it just had this, okay, I've killed the villain, now I'm going to deliver a one-liner.
Yeah. And I loved Ventura's costume when he comes back, when they're about to send him in. It's like he's got an oven on the front of him.
Yes.
Like a toaster oven.
Yes, he's almost like a silver Darth Vader outfit that he's refusing to wear.
Which led to the photoshopping, because they had previous footage of him killing previous contestants, and they just mapped Schwarzenegger and Amber's face onto the victims. And it was nice to see Dweezil finally get a line. Although I have to wonder, and I'm facetiously wondering this, Of course, at the end, he sticks Dawson in these little carts that send them into the field,
Yeah.
and it blew up.
I was wondering why that happened. Like,
I
why
mean, because 80s. I mean,
why would they have blown up? He'd blown up, and not everybody else that had been sent down in this thing blown up.
because he was the bad guy, and it was the
Right.
80s.
It just like, okay, so now him shooting out, he's lighter. I don't know. They sent down, Maria Conchita Alonso, and she's probably just as light, if not lighter, than Dawson. She didn't fly off and blow up.
Yeah, and neither did anybody else that they sent through those
Yeah.
tubes. So, one comment from Bodo, I don't know exactly what he's referencing here. He-Man in the red beret, I was expecting him to say weasel at any moment.
He-Man in the red beret.
Or maybe the man. I think probably the man. I maybe copied it wrong.
I
The
think
man in
he's
the
think,
red beret.
I think he's talking to Weasel Zappa.
Oh, Weasel. I didn't get a Zappa reference. I apologize. And I'm just gonna finish off with one of more Bodo's comments. The Running Man cost $27 million to make. $25 million of the cost had to be steroids. $1.5 million for the location cost, and $500K for the crappy acting. Sequels and remakes, no.
Remake could be, well,
Well,
I'm
if you could
surprised no one's remade The Running Man.
yeah, I'm kind of half expecting a lot of this Schwarzenegger, well, a lot of those classic '80s things to be remade.
Well, I mean, this they could take more of the source material than
Yeah,
they did here. I mean, they could drop the one-liners.
yeah. A more serious approach, but then again, and I don't know when was it written. Do I have that in my trivia? Because I'm wondering if 1982. So actually, King may not have been referencing the dance, but the movie was definitely playing on the dance reference.
Yeah.
The dance move, The Running Man. I don't know if King was referencing that or if it was a thing by the 82, but it's not really a reference that would float these days.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of nostalgia for it, unless it's people our age. And we're not the ones who are trying to pack into theaters. If that was the case, well, no, they did try to pack us in with TFA, but
I mean, you put Ryan Gosling or somebody in the lead for this, and you fucking run it with that.
Yeah. Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman.
You need someone who can do the action thing, and he's not Wolverine anymore. So
yeah,
and he could pull off one-liners. So yeah, actually, Hugh Jackman.
No one-liners. Do away with the one-liners.
Okay, actually, I could see them remaking a lot of that stuff with Hugh Jackman. Although he's a little old now, but I think Schwarzenegger was a little old when he did this. A little old for the action stuff, anyway.
Yeah.
On the brains. I'm going right down the middle. It was okay. It was just kind of there. I nodded off a couple of times, but it's a 2.5.
I enjoyed it pretty much for the most part. The one-liners were just painful, so it lost a brain for that. However, Richard Dawson gives it a brain back, so I'm going 3.
All right, and what have we learned?
We learned that those back alley bookies really, I mean, how do they do it? How do they keep track of who's betting on what? Can they write this unforgeable shorthand really quickly, or were they just fast writers in general?
Well, I mean, in that line of work, you have to be able to keep notes pretty quickly. Yeah.
I mean, they gave back this little tiny slip of paper for like each bet, but they were adding people up as they went along. In fact, they added Richards, and they somehow were just ready to take bets on that action. I don't know how they do it.
And
they're amazing.
And I learned that we'll be back because we're taking next week off due to some scheduling issues. And so until next time, when we'll be reviewing The Lobster, you put this one on the list. I know nothing about it.
I've heard strange things. I'm not very familiar with it, but I just heard it's weird.
Until then, always remember, never forget, wherever you go in life, there you are.
There you are.